Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our third session to our series on caregivers, basically helping to lift others up without feeling weighed down ourselves. This is going to be a little bit of an experiment. Generally, I've just recorded a video on my phone and then posted it on YouTube. Now we're going to try doing it live, see if we can get in real-time reactions, and at the end, if there are any prayer requests, we can actually do a prayer at the end instead of just saying, hey, how can I pray for you in the coming week? So, as you are joining along, please let me know you're listening. I would love to know who all is tuning in. Today, as you can see in the description below, the topic is sharing the load, more or less helping us to, as it were, not feel like we have to bear all of life's burdens by ourselves. Basically, sharing the load, helping each other to work through these difficult times. For those of you that are following along at home, today's reading is going to be Exodus 18, verses 1 through 17. And my pages are sticking together. All right. So, as always, if you're watching this after the fact, not watching it live, please feel free to leave comments in the comment section down below. Please feel free, if you are watching this live, to give me comments in real time. I would love to hear any and all responses that people might have. As always, we do have icebreaker questions. So the first one is, growing up, how were arguments settled in your family? I don't really remember there being that many arguments. My parents didn't really argue. They may have deliberated over certain items, but not argued or fought. I don't remember them fighting or arguing at all, but maybe I just didn't see it. As for between my brothers and myself, my parents played mediators. They helped to settle any arguments, come to sort of a middle ground, and that was that. Not really anything interesting. If there is anyone watching, please feel free to let me know, how were arguments settled in your families when you were growing up? Otherwise, we'll move on to the second question. What is the longest time you've been apart from your family? The longest that I've been away from my family was probably my year as a young adult volunteer through the Presbyterian Church USA. I served in New Orleans as a young adult volunteer at Touro Infirmary, one of the hospitals in New Orleans, as the chaplain intern. So that went from August of 2015 to August of 2016. I was not able to go home for Christmas. I was not able to go home for Easter. There was one weekend where I was given permission to fly home because I was being examined to become certified ready to seek a call. So that was something that I needed to fly home for. As for otherwise, I don't think I went very long otherwise. In seminary, I was able to come home between terms, more or less. Whether that was driving, taking a bus, something like that, I would have basically a week off between terms, and my parents would be more than happy to pay for gas along the way or to pay for a bus ticket, something like that. So with that, I don't think I went more than 6 months, but my YAV year, I went a solid 10 to 11 months before I actually came home, even for just a weekend. Can't think of any other times longer than that. For those of you that are watching live, please let me know what's the longest you all have been away from family or friends. I'm not seeing anyone commenting, so move on to the reading. If you are watching this not live, you're watching this after the fact, please feel free to leave comments in the comment section down below, either on YouTube or on Facebook. I'd love to still read them. Otherwise, we will move on to the reading for today, which, again, those of you following along at home, we are in the book of Exodus, chapter 18. Looks like the whole of chapter 18. Listen now for the word of our Lord. Now Jethro, the priest of Midian and father-in-law of Moses, heard of everything God had done for Moses and for his people Israel, and how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. After Moses had sent away his wife Zipporah, his father-in-law Jethro received her and her 2 sons. One son was named Gershom, for Moses said, I have become an alien in a foreign land, and the other was named Eleazar. For he said, my father's God was my helper, he saved me from the sword of Pharaoh. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, together with Moses' sons and wife, came to him in the desert, where he was camped near the mountain of God. Jethro had sent word to him, I, your father-in-law Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and her 2 sons. So Moses went out to meet his father-in-law and bowed down and kissed him. They greeted each other and then went into the tent. Moses told his father-in-law about everything the Lord had done to Pharaoh and the Egyptians for Israel's sake, and about all the hardships they had met along the way, and how the Lord had saved them. Jethro was delighted to hear about all the good things the Lord had done for Israel in rescuing them from the hand of the Egyptians. He said, Praise be to the Lord, who rescued you from the hands of the Egyptians and of Pharaoh, and who rescued the people from the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all other gods. For he did this to those who had treated Israel arrogantly. Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, brought a burnt offering and other sacrifices to God. And Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law in the presence of God. The next day Moses took his seat to serve as judge for the people, and they stood around him from morning till evening. When his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he said, What is this you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge, while all these people stand around you from morning till evening? Moses answered him, Because the people come to me to seek God's will. Whenever they have a dispute, it is brought to me, and I decide between the parties and inform them of God's decrees and laws. Moses' father-in-law replied, What you are doing is not good. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone. Listen now to me, and I will give you some advice, and may God be with you. You must be the people's representative before God and bring their disputes to Him. Teach them the decrees and laws, and show them the way to live and the duties they are to perform. But select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials around over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Have them serve as judges for the people at all times, but have them bring every difficult case to you. The simple cases they can decide themselves. That will make your load lighter, because they will share it with you. If you do this, and God so commands, you will be able to stand the strain, and all these people will go home satisfied. Moses listened to his father-in-law and did everything he said. He chose capable men from all Israel and made them leaders of the peoples, officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. They served as judges for the people at all times. The difficult cases they brought to Moses, but the simple ones they decided themselves. Then Moses sent his father-in-law on his way, and Jethro returned to his own country. This is the word of our Lord. Thanks be to God. So we don't have as many questions today, but some of them do have quite a few answers. Wow. All right, so I'll be reading a number of these more than once. All right, first question. Why do you think Moses worked so hard? First, no one else could do what he did. He was a workaholic. He was a perfectionist. He hated to say no. He liked to be in control and tell others what to do. He had a need to please others. He thought he was doing what others wanted, or a creative solution hadn't been suggested. Again, why do you think Moses worked so hard? No one else could do what he did. He was a workaholic. He was a perfectionist. He hated to say no. He liked to be in control and tell others what to do. He had a need to please others. He thought he was doing what God wanted. A creative solution hadn't been suggested. There are a few of these that are definitely good. The one that really sticks out to me is he thought he was doing what God wanted. He hadn't really been given any other instructions as to doing what Jethro suggested. So, just as all responsibility of leading the people through the desert was put on Moses' shoulders, he assumed settling disputes, figuring out problems, all of that those were his responsibilities as well, that he wasn't allowed to allocate and distribute responsibility elsewhere. Then again, a creative solution hadn't been suggested. That's entirely possible. I don't think he wanted to be in control per se, or that he was a workaholic, a perfectionist, anything like that. We don't really see that in the text. It's possible no one else could do what he did. Moses had a very strong faith, as opposed to the people who complained very often about not having water, not having food, the food rotting, so on and so forth. So, that's my response. If anyone would like to comment, please feel free to comment below. Otherwise, we'll move on to the second question. If you were Moses, how would you have felt about Jethro's advice? Scolded, skeptical, cared for, relieved, excited, or threatened? Again, if you were Moses, how would you have felt about Jethro's advice? Scolded, skeptical, cared for, relieved, excited, or threatened? For me, I would have to say cared for or relieved. I think I would have been relieved that this is not something I would have to do all on my own, and I would feel cared for that my father-in-law would step in and say, you need to slow down. You're going to hurt yourself doing this. That shows true care, love, passion for my well-being from my father-in-law. Fortunately, I have a father-in-law who would do that and who is more than willing to step in and say, Brad, you need to slow down if need be. How would you all feel if you were Moses? Please let me know in the comment section down below. Question number 3. Which of the following would be a strength in your life? Which would be a weakness? So we're looking for a strength and a weakness. At least 2 answers. Settling other people's disputes, listening to suggestions, giving constructive criticism, accepting criticism, delegating responsibility, organizing people and events, releasing control of situations. So again, which of this list would be a strength? Which of this list would be a weakness for you? Settling people's disputes, listening to suggestions, giving criticism, accepting criticism, delegating responsibility, organizing people, events, and releasing control of situations. I think for me, a strength would be organizing people and events. I'm very creative. I'm fairly resourceful in that regard. Delegating responsibility would also be another strength. If I know someone has a better handle on a certain aspect of a project or a certain project as a whole, I might ask them, hey, this is something that needs to be done. Would you be willing to take on a leadership role either in this area, or would you be willing to spearhead this idea because you would be our best man or woman for the job? In terms of a weakness, I think for me, biggest one is accepting criticism, or even giving criticism. Just the word criticism sounds so harsh to me. So, I mean, maybe this is the English major in me trying to make a distinction between criticism and critiquing, but to me, critiquing is helpful. Criticizing is demeaning. It's tearing someone down. But that's how my mind kind of makes a difference between the two. So I would be very concerned about hurting someone's feelings in giving constructive criticism, maybe being too harsh, too picky, or accepting criticism. Admittedly, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so accepting criticism has been a growing edge for me. It's something that I've worked on and I've gotten a lot better at, but sometimes it sends me down a trail where I wonder, why did I say that? Why did I do that a certain way, whatever? And then I have to basically pull in the reins on myself so that I'm not tearing myself down. But luckily that happens hardly if ever anymore. So that's my response. Let me know what you all think in the comment section down below. Question number 4. What responsibility has been wearing you out lately? Taking care of the kids, taking care of a parent, settling family disputes, fulfilling church commitments, bringing home the bacon, dealing with all the demands at work. Not any of one responsibility, just juggling them all, or something else. So again, what responsibility has been wearing you down or wearing you out lately? Caring for kids, caring for a parent, settling family disputes, fulfilling church commitments, bringing home the bacon, dealing with demands at work, just juggling all of your responsibilities, or something else. For me, I think the responsibility that's been kind of wearing me out lately has been fulfilling church responsibilities. Being a pastor during a pandemic, I'm not allowed to visit parishioners, whether in their homes. I'm not allowed to visit them at the hospital, anything like that. So if something goes wrong, I give them a phone call. If I want to check in on them, I give them a phone call. And the fact that those feel just so impersonal, I think that takes a little bit out of me. Sitting around my office writing sermon upon sermon and trying to figure out what series I want to do next with these Bible studies. I can bury my nose in books all day, but that's not exactly the most exhilarating and life-giving exercise for me. I'm used to having other responsibilities like choir session meetings, men's Bible study, things like that, and what do you know? Those things are not happening. We're not allowed to gather in groups, so session meetings are essentially someone has a question, we pass it around an email chain. Choir is not meeting, period, end of story. Men's Bible study, I'm doing this instead, hoping that we can, this is sort of a substitute for Sunday school and men's Bible study. So, church commitments / demands at work. At this point, it's just become kind of wading the waters and seeing what responsibilities in my original job description can I fulfill. And unfortunately, not being able to be as involved in the life of the church as I have been, or at least not as many ways. I think that's what's been wearing me out the most. What about you all? What's been wearing you out the most in terms of caring for someone else, settling disputes, church commitments, meeting demands, something else? Let me know. Number 5, when is a time you have felt overwhelmed, as Moses must have, as he tried to judge all the people's disputes? And what, if anything, did you do to relieve the pressure? Time that I have felt overwhelmed. Oddly enough, I can't think of anything. And maybe that's just because I have good coping techniques. I'm able to kind of nip it in the bud before it grows too out of hand. There was my last call, not going into too many details on that, but I mean, definitely demands were high at my first call. So, how I compensated for that was keeping a journal, so I'm not just bottling up emotions, feelings, things like that. Spoke with a professional and played piano. I had a key to the church. If I wanted to play piano, the church was only 10 minutes away, so I drove there, I played piano, and I drove home. And that's the only time feeling overwhelmed that I can think of. That and chamomile tea. Tea helps any situation. Because tea. Or coffee. Either. Seriously though, is there a time that you all have felt overwhelmed, and what did you do to kind of relieve the pressure? I'm curious. Let me know in the comments section down below. Where do you sense God challenging you to change your routine? In prayer, in Bible study, household chores, in my work, with my family, in sleeping, in exercise, or something else other? Again, where do you sense God challenging you to change your routine? Prayer, Bible study, household chores, work, family, sleep, exercise, or other, something else. I think the biggest thing for me is exercise. I've mentioned this in the past. Katie and I are generally fairly conscious about how much sleep we get, what we eat, things like that, but she had a member when we were staying with my parents between my previous call and this call. She had a membership at a gym. We went with my parents, if not just the two of us, often enough. So we visited the gym often enough. The terrain there was not very hilly at all. It was rather flat. So going for a 5K jog straight through, doing a 10K broken up into certain increments per what the app we're using designates, things like that, was simple. And when we moved down here, I was doing 6.5 to 7 miles every time I went out for a jog. Then that stopped because we have the hills, and they're not just little bunny hills, they are 10, 11, 12% grades at certain points. And not something my legs were necessarily used to, so trying to jog up a hill like that, or trying to jog down a hill that is that steep, not exactly something I've trained for, not exactly something I'm used to, so, or that Caitlin is used to, so that more or less stopped. And now the pandemic is in effect, the gym that we were looking at getting a membership at has kind of, supposedly it's opened back up, or it is going to open back up, but whether or not we would go there, that's to be seen. Regardless, that's where I sense God kind of challenging me. Where do you sense God challenging you in your life? As always, the last question is, how can this group help lighten your load by praying for you now and in the coming week? I don't see that anyone is here live, so we won't be doing a prayer right this second, but if you do have prayer requests, please leave those in the comment section, leave those in either here or on YouTube, where I hope to get this video up. I don't know if I'd be able to do that. Or If you have my phone number, my email, please feel free to shoot me an email, give me a phone call, and I'd be happy to pray with you, happy to pray for you on Sunday morning. Otherwise, I will try to do these live from now on. Hopefully we can get some live responses and I can read them out loud, see how other people are responding, see how that goes. So tomorrow, our lesson, it will be on setting limits. So until tomorrow, stay healthy, stay safe, and God bless.